All right, Gussapolooza 2024. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And for those folks at home, welcome. We're at the MTAV Barn Stage, the Multitech Audiovisual Barn Stage. They are the key sponsors for this area. They're a key sponsor of the live stream that you're seeing at home. All this equipment and gear, look them up for sure. They are worth your while. Now we're going to introduce Noam Halberstadt. He's began his music career at 16, playing guitar professionally with local event bands. 2015, he launched his own project called Human Index and toured Toronto for a year, transitioned into music recording and engineering, joining Revolution Recording and working with renowned bands like Alexis on Fire, the Headstones, Strumbellas. Experience as an engineer highlighted the gap in musicians' understanding of marketing, prompting a shift into music marketing for him. He now specializes in music marketing, driving innovative campaigns and exploring the intersection of AI creatives and music advertising. So make sure to connect with him on LinkedIn and look him up on his socials. Without further ado, here's Noam. Give him a warm welcome, please.
Hey, everybody. You hear me? Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for coming, everybody here and everybody online as well. This is a super amazing event, and I'm super happy to be talking here. I really just want to kind of dive in. That was a terrific introduction from Kevin, so thank you. What we're going to be talking about today is kind of how, basically our approach to investing within your own releases, the different types of tactics and the different types of things that are available to musicians now, and what works at what level. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is PR, because for a lot of people, they don't really quite understand what the purpose of it is and how to use it properly and really at what level to bring in a PR campaign. What is PR? It's basically public relations, essentially getting your name to specific people within specific niches. That's essentially how I see it. So really, it comes down to things like playlisting, blog pitching, radio pitching, anything that you basically be speaking to an individual about your music. That's kind of PR. So some of the biggest advantages for PR happen to be, of course, it's because it's a niche, right? Like you want to get your name into a specific blog. And within that blog, you have obviously very specialized readers who will now take this information and act on it. That is typically like the premise of all of this. And it's great. It can lead to some serious exposure, really get you some new listeners, some new follows, and some new streams. That kind of leads to the disadvantages of basically what this all is. And really what it comes down to is the consistent investment of PR, which, can be very difficult for people that are budget conscious, especially, in the indie music scene. Amongst other things, there's probably one of the main issues other than that would be actual viewership and readership. Like blogship has gone down like crazy. We're not living in the same world that we were 10 years ago. So really, it's a very different sort of understanding of how to get your name out there. And PR, again, it works, but doesn't always work for people who are just up and coming, and tends to be very expensive. And really requires sort of a long-term understanding and a long-term investment of that. So really over years of investing into this sort of concept, this sort of ideology of where you have people kind of coming to blogs and reading it. And really at that point, you start to see some sort of increase in your overall audience. A big part of PR is playlisting. So much so that I'm pretty sure it's the most common question that I get asked when I'm talking to prospective clients. The first thing they ask me is, do you pitch me to playlists? To which I kind of at this point have to say yes, but only because I have to. So I have a specific network of playlists that I pitch people to, but I don't like to use it. I don't like third-party playlisting. I don't think it really works on a mass level. But really what it does is it helps you boost your initial release. So if you have a release and you set up this sort of playlisting schema with a third-party playlister, really what you're going to see is an increase in streams specifically, but very rarely do you actually see your overall following increase, which is really what you want to do. You want to develop an audience. You don't want to just get people to listen to your song and move on. A big problem with third-party playlisting happens to be that people really typically listen to them in the background. I mean, personally, I don't think I've ever put on a playlist and then actively looked at who was on. I just kind of want it for the vibe, or I want it for the drive that I have, or for the study session that I'm about to go into. It's not an active sort of listening space, and that is kind of like the main issue. Is that it'll drive that sort of initial boost, like I'm showing here, but ultimately it kind of comes short in that it's not actually offering you a proper. It's not actually offering you a proper following or really a system in which that would grow. It's almost like a blip. And another problem with having that sort of blip is that Spotify is very algorithmic. So to see a blip like that is going to send a signal to the Spotify algorithms that might affect how your release turns out, which could be a problem, or future releases. You kind of want to show Spotify more of a steady incline, not bam, bam, bam. It doesn't quite work out as well that way. And that's generally what we see from that. The other main tactic that we use as opposed to PR is, of course, social media advertising. It's incredibly powerful for a lot of reasons. One of the biggest reasons, one of the biggest benefits, is that it actually grows every single metric. So when you're thinking about, I want to grow streams, or I want to grow followers, or I want to grow on saves, I want to get more playlist ads. Like, these are all specific objectives that you would necessarily have to think about specifically. Let's say if you're going into a PR campaign, you need to actually specify those goals. When you're using meta advertising, it actually hits all of them at once, which is crazy. It kind of blew me away when I first started using them in the schema that I'm using them in. You end up seeing an increase in streams, you see an increase in followers, but I mean, more than that, you see an increase in saves, which is the actual listener's intention to listen to you in the future. So now you've not only created one stream, but likely multiple. So these are all things that basically fall under kind of the meta umbrella in terms of objectives. So from my perspective to the indie artist is that it kind of makes sense to do that as opposed to PR on the outset, just because of the broad reach that it basically tends to give you. Another huge benefit is that the people that you're bringing in are highly targeted to what basically you're looking for, not necessarily conforming to a blog or a list or their particular viewership. You create the traffic. You figure out who is listening to your music based on things that are similar to you, that you know. And these are all very important because when speaking with other companies, with other marketing agencies or PR agencies, it's important that they understand your specific image, your brand, your aesthetic, your sound, more importantly. There's really nobody that knows that better than you. Ultimately, you basically take all of that on your own in a good way, and you're able to drive this traffic that's like, you would never see it otherwise. It's a very powerful tool in terms of very finite targeting. And you're also able to test different markets, like very agilely. You can kind of go from, I want to see what's going on in the States versus, let's turn on Australia and see what's happening there. Or maybe we make an ad for Europe and see how Europe is treating this. So there are so many different ways that you can kind of tweak your targeting and test different markets, really just at your fingertips without having to invest in a larger company to do all of this work for you. So budgeting is another amazing thing that kind of puts it above pretty much anything else when you're at the beginning of investing in music because it's so scalable. There's generally speaking a kind of a benchmark for what you would like to invest or what you should be investing in terms of like what you're going to get in return on your data. But ultimately, it's one of the most scalable things that you can do. So you can start by doing $5 a day, move it up to $10 a day, bump it up to $20. And maybe next week you lose your job, so you cut it, and it's fine. You can pick it up again next month. So it's one of those things that you're not necessarily pigeonholed into. I need to do this. Like you can turn it on. You can turn it off. It's one of those things that's super flexible for you. And really, depending on where you are in your career, it can seriously give you the push that you need. for the budget that you have, which is really what we're going for, because in this industry, budget is such a big thing. So I just want to get into a specific case study. We had an artist come to us. She hadn't released an album on a mass scale. She had done singles here and there sporadically, never really worked out for her. So the incredibly interesting thing about this graph is you can actually see, and this is one of the reasons why I use it, you can see where we turn the ads on and off, which is pretty funny. So November, we turn them on. You can see the increase. And then we turn them off in December. And then in January, we turn them back on. You can literally see that those spikes correlate exactly from when we actually made those ads. And again, as you can see, she had a few releases and a couple of different ad campaigns going forward, and it continued to climb on a very steady pace as long as we were running the advertising. So this was the stream count on her first single that she released. So where you see those sort of massive flood of listens, that kind of came from the ad campaign. And eventually what it did was it triggered the algorithmic playlist, which is another huge benefit from meta advertising. As long as you push enough traffic, the algorithm will pick you up and you'll start going on algorithmic playlists, which is why you're still seeing a steady amount of streams even after we were running those campaigns. And the actual users within those spikes were following, as you could see from the graph earlier. So these aren't like one-off streams. Like these are actual fans that want to listen to her music. Another amazing thing, again, like I was saying, it just kind of all correlates, right? So you can look at this graph, and it's almost exactly the same as the streaming graph. And this is the playlist ads. And they're not third-party playlist ads. These are personal playlists. People who wanted to listen to her music. So again, when you kind of compare these things to the PR world in terms of should I buy playlists? Should I go to a playlisting company and invest money in playlists? Well, I can tell you don't need to, because you're going to be added to playlists if you find the right audience. So I mean, again, like it all kind of works together, right? And another big thing again is saves. It's all kind of the same graph, I know, but it kind of proves the point further. So you get these sort of like saves, and what a save is really the individual's intention to continue to listen to you. Maybe not just once, maybe not just twice, but several times. Like you've created a fan by getting that save. That's essentially what it is. So, I mean, when you compare these things, everything kind of has its own place. It's not like I'm firmly against certain things. It's just a matter of like when you're starting out and you're trying to drive the most premium traffic, like where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is certainly going to be in a place that you can actually control the outcomes. You can control the testing. You can control the investment at the end of the day, right? So really that, when it comes down to it, when you think about it as an artist, I would definitely be leaning far closer towards meta advertising than large scale investment. But again, this all really depends on where you are specifically. People who are already doing millions of streams may not actually benefit from meta advertising at all. The competition might be too steep, right? But as an independent artist, it's far easier for you to actually rank and control your own audience using this specific tactic. As you grow, things change, right? Let's say you're in Toronto and you want to go break into BC. Well, how are you going to break into a brand new market ice cold? Ads can help, but you want a personal touch. You want some sort of authenticity, and that's really where PR can come and help you. You can find people within that specific niche, within wherever you're going, within the city, then they'll actually be able to connect you with people on the ground. So there are times and places for all of these different things, but again, when it comes to actually figuring out how to build your audience from the bottom up and getting the best bang for your buck with your cash, it will likely be meta advertising. So some of the things that we can do, understanding social media, going out and listening to music marketers. There's a whole bunch now on YouTube that you can basically just listen to, and they have some fantastic advice. Meta advertising is not the only form of paid advertising. There's Spotify ads as well, TikTok as well. These platforms, while also incredibly powerful, in my experience, and it can be different really for any artist, they can also be incredibly powerful tools just as much as meta. So really the first few steps that I would take as an independent artist is develop a plan, figure out exactly what you want. Are you building an artist? Do you want to just boost your release? Are you, trying to build a following for shows? These are all things that you need to be considering when you're actually trying to, at the outset of all of this. And make sure you're testing. Take that ad budget, chop it up, invest it in different places. You don't always have to necessarily go for one big thing, but even a small test of just a couple of bucks here and there can give you a good indication of where everything is going to go in the future. And then you can kind of double down on whatever is actually working. Okay, and I think that's pretty much all I have, and I'm happy to take questions if that's a thing. Yes, sir.
So can I ask a question about format? Because you mentioned, getting into Meta, but what do you see that there's a sweet spot in terms of the format of advertising that would work better? Is it video? Is it stills with carousel ads? Or what
yeah, it's a super interesting question. Carousels are very, very finite in terms of what you can accomplish in terms of objectives. But video content, performance content. People want to see you perform. That will do the best, for sure. The problem with that becomes, again, budget. So how do you hire a whole film crew and try to figure it out? There are other options. AI has become a very, very popular alternative to things like that. It tends to work very, very well just because from my theory is that because it's consistently changing, consistently moving, you're immediately drawing the user in and basically getting a click from that. And if they continue to click through, like I send people to a landing page, if they continue to click, so really the expectation is they click 3 or 4 times so that you kind of know, okay, this person is actually interested in my music. So much so that they're clicking through this sort of click thing to get to the end, Mm-hmm. Exactly. Does that make sense in terms of like creatives and agility and all that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious. I've been told in the past that like 5,000 is... Oh,
just for the stream.
hi, how do you do? Randall James. I've been told in the past that it's around $5,000 to do a campaign, if you will. You mentioned a budget. Do you have a recommendation based on the Meta platform? Where to start?
Yeah, so again, it's really about what you want to accomplish, and then essentially you would basically break it down from there. So like if you wanted to run a Meta campaign specifically, I usually recommend similar to Spotify, it's about $250 to $300 per track to advertise something like that, and with that you'll generally get enough data in order to make any sort of like concise decisions going forward. If you want to do anything extra, again, you have to just understand that you'd have to flex that budget out, right? So if you have a YouTube video, for example, that's an additional budget. If you want to promote that video on Facebook specifically, that's additional. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very dependent on what you want to get done. So like a full-blown campaign, you want to do music video promotion, all of that. I mean, I'd probably think you're getting close to $5,000.
It's good the way you break it down, though, because it gives you a chance to be, pick the right thing.
You can choose it, right?
Yeah. Like it's kind of like I'm interested in this and this right now, so that's
Some people don't always come out with a music video, or they don't have a music video to the quality that they would want to necessarily invest, a couple $100 in. You can skip it. Just you got to think about budget. It's all about what you can do. Yes. You got to pass the mic.
Can you get classes on how to run that Meta thing? Because it just never works the way I try to get it to work. And then they change it when I figure it out.
Yeah, that's the thing with Meta. It's always changing, and it's glitchy beyond all belief. I'm certainly happy to chat if you want afterward.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. So do you find there's a sweet spot in terms of release timing for when you have new material to share, when you should be spiking that with advertising?
So it's a great question. In general, the way that I like to kind of do it is I like to kind of see what happens organically. So I generally wait a few days just to kind of see what I can do on my own or what the artist can do on their own. And then at that point, let's kick in the ads because ultimately it doesn't matter. And in reality, it doesn't actually matter when you start the ads. It's going to be effective regardless. Like if let's say you have an older release that no one ever listened to that you love, put an ad on it. It's going to do well. You're going to get traffic. It's the way it goes because, in the user's mindset, for them it's new. For them it's brand new. And when they see that ad, it's like, oh, this is a new song for me. Like it doesn't really matter when it's released. The release tends to matter more for charting, and things like that when you're kind of competing up front. But if you're just developing your artist, your artist base, your audience base, really, it doesn't really matter when you're running the ads. It's let's get traffic to that song, right?
Yeah, thank you for that. And a follow-up question is, do you ever find that there's a sweet spot where you're doing a collaborative campaign leveraging Spotify playlisting, like using Spotify natively as well as accompanying with a meta campaign?
Yeah, we do that quite often. I mean, I work with another marketing agency called Dotted Music, and they have done extensive research in terms of like what they're comfortable using in terms of playlisting, because like that in and of itself is a whole crazy thing because it's so difficult to understand like who's actually legitimate in this business. Because the reality is they're not. If you look at the terms and conditions, you're not actually allowed to at all submit yourself to third-party playlisting on Spotify's terms and conditions. But finding out the ones who are actually legitimate are that much more difficult. So like we use what we know to bring in organic streams, but even at that point, it's not necessarily a huge amount. Like we generally see maybe a couple hundred streams from a playlist, or from a couple. If we're lucky, it's 1,000, but it's never usually anything like super, super crazy.
Is that because you think, or maybe it's proven that people aren't necessarily deliberately looking for new music on Spotify? They're looking for new music on other social media platforms?
Yeah, so we're talking about Spotify native. Like Spotify native is a little bit weird. The last time I used it, it just happened to be more expensive. I mean, like the nice thing about it is it does tell you like specifically how many streams you're getting from the ad, which is not something that you get from Meta. But at the same time, I was paying more. And it wasn't necessarily converting as well either, which is another interesting thing. And I just feel like it's potentially the platform itself. So when you're advertising on Instagram, and Instagram is definitely the most engaged platform, like hands down, other than TikTok, but that's a different world. So like people are kind of primed to move on. They're primed to kind of grab something from Instagram, right? As opposed to, Spotify, where they're really kind of meant to just be on the app. And I personally don't see a stronger user flow on Spotify side than on Meta side, but it can work. I'm not saying that it can't. There are people who may perform better on Spotify versus Meta, but I've just found, just on average, Meta ends up being a little bit cheaper and a little bit more effective.
Nice. Thank you. Any other questions? I got a million. I just don't want to keep asking questions.
You can keep going. I don't mind.
I wonder if there's a template, like something that starts you off as an independent artist where you can assess them and say, you're at this spot. I know what you need. Because I somewhat understand your audience, et cetera. You need to do the following things.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into that, right? So, digital advertising is also only one side of this whole equation, right? So if you want to break it down now to let's get into the mindset of this startup indie musician, we're taking it to the streets, we're getting in the clubs, we're playing all the time, we're getting in the festivals. It's really two sides of the same coin, right? So if you're what we call working on the grassroots side of things, which is playing consistently and getting your name out there and doing things on the local setting, and then translating all of this also onto the digital side of things, you're going to see significantly more success and you're going to see it faster. So to me, that's kind of like the name of the whole game. So what I do is kind of half of the half of the picture, if that makes sense. I try to keep everything in the digital world aligned and primed, but at the same time, there's this sort of requirement on the artist to actually perform their art. We got to do that. We're artists. That's what we do. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I answered your question with that one, but
yeah, I think so, because I think a lot of artists would be interested to know if there's a template that exists for them. and like in your experience, I've seen this work so often that I can make these recommendations?
Yeah, and that's a good question. It can be difficult to assess on the surface level, just because it really does depend on what you're doing and what platforms you're using and where you're at within those platforms, like what your goals are specifically, like how far do you want to take it? Because, I work with artists that, sometimes they have perfectly great day jobs and all they want to do is get their music out to as many people as possible versus, I have artists, indie artists, musicians that are from the ground up that really, really want to get, kind of break into the scene and develop their audience and develop all of this stuff. So it's kind of, I would say it's kind of difficult to assess like right up front, but at the same time, there is this sort of like threshold, and I think you can feel it even as an artist, where it's like, okay, things are really moving, things are happening. But in terms of a template, I do feel it's tough.
Yeah.
Just because all artists are so bloody different.
No kidding. Yeah.
And that also relates to advertising. Like I've seen even with the same artists, with each release, we have to choose a new audience because the audience doesn't necessarily translate to the different songs, right? Even though it's the same artist. So, yeah, it can be a slog to kind of figure out where you are. But again, ultimately, I feel like really, unless you're doing like tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of streams per day, you're in a spot where, PR, like basic PR, basic social advertising is going to be incredibly beneficial for your audience development in general.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hello.
Hi.
In terms of PR and outreach, what would you say would be the best strategy? Like, would you find publications that fit your niche
Absolutely.
and then,
Yeah.
let's say you're releasing a single, like what would you reach out to them a month before? I know there's like press kits and stuff that you can send them.
Yeah. So definitely a month is a good it's a good place to start. The earlier you prepare for PR, the better. In my experience, so like the more you have your pitches kind of like, and actually this is interesting because it's kind of like part of the intersection that I use kind of with AI, because AI really helps with pitching and takes a lot of that slog away. I would probably say a month is a good place to start, and certainly, don't be pitching yourself to people that have no interest in your music. Research, find your niche, and invest strategically. Because the PR world is tough. It's very, very difficult, and especially to get an immediate return, it can be an issue. So research is definitely very, very key.
I have a question when it comes to populating Meta specifically, I guess, about your audience demographics. If you as an artist have collected an email list, et cetera, but you're not really sure, like just from that information, what the demo is. Do you have recommendations on how to pull that into Meta?
That's super interesting. I don't particularly with an email collection, but there is another form of data collection that would really help with Facebook, and it's utilizing your Facebook pixel. So the way that I run Facebook ads, I may as well break it down. We run it through basically what we do is we set up what's called conversion campaigns. So a conversion campaign would be something like a sale or a lead or anything like that's very specific and that can be tracked. So the way that we end up doing this is we do it through a landing page. So from the ad, we send the user to a landing page that has our Facebook pixel encoded in there, along with the conversion API token, which is also incredibly important, but maybe just skipping over that for now, because that's a rabbit hole. We then basically, the landing page that we use actually has like this sort of like already custom conversion for Facebook. So like I don't really have to do anything there. It's nice and easy. I drop in the pixel and you're good to go. As soon as you click on let's say we're doing a Spotify ad, I will only put Spotify there just to kind of hone in the focus. We target specifically Spotify, like people who are fans of Spotify as an interest on Facebook. And what we do is we basically force the user to click 3 times. We click first on the ad, we click second on the landing page, we click third on Spotify. So that 3 times, number 1, roots out bots. Number 2, tells us that the individual is actually interested in what we're doing because, they click through 3 times. I hate clicking through stuff, so if I do it, I generally like you. from that point, that's sort of structure that we have, and then we would basically be looking at the metrics to see exactly what's happening. So like our average cost could be anywhere from like 90 cents to 20 cents, really depending on the popularity, of the creative or of the song. And within that, there's so much that you can test, right? Like you can test different parts of the song, different aspects of the video. And essentially, it's part of like now the best practices is that you're using 3 or 4 creatives and you're testing them against each other in order to see what's actually working. So that's kind of like the whole structure of it.
Nice. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going just because I'm fascinated by this. But in terms of retention, the artist ultimately needs to retain the relationship with the...
Yes.
Right?
Sorry, I missed. I went on a tangent and then I forgot where I was going. But I found out where I was going. So essentially what we're doing is we're collecting data. That's the important part here. And that's the thing that artists don't really think about in general when they're advertising. They just kind of see the money fly away. But really what you're purchasing is intent. You're purchasing the user's intent. Like you have now this pool of individuals that you can what's called retarget. And you know, if you have merchandise, you can sell them merchandise. They gave you a stream. They followed you on Spotify. The very least that they can do is buy a t-shirt from you. You know? Like that's sort of the idea. And it does work because these are individuals who are actual fans that want to support you. Right? And that's part of what the meta advertising does in terms of targeting and all of that. And yeah, in terms of data collection and retention, audience retention, stuff like that, like it's so key. And if you want to start, you know, getting an early return on your investment, start collecting your data now. And you don't necessarily have to do that with like Spotify conversion ads, but you could do that with boosting your posts. $5 here, $5 there, seeing what comes in. At a certain point, you're going to develop this sort of mass of data of interested people who like your content, who like your music, right? That's, to me, that's like probably in this indie world of the battle against, you know, indies versus the labels, that's going to give you the biggest edge, for sure. Because when you think about, you know, like advertising budgets and things like that labels invest, you're looking at like tens of thousands of dollars, which is just, you can't possibly compete at that level, right? So you have to try to find ways to kind of create these other revenue streams, and data collection is so crucial in that.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
Do you have any lessons that you learned from campaigns that might not have gathered the results that you were hoping for?
Definitely. Actually, I'm running a campaign right now that's been particularly difficult. To give you kind of a primer on what's going on, we have a French artist. He's from France, and he basically plays like kind of classic country, sort of what they call like the Tulsa, Oklahoma feel. So kind of akin to John Mayer or certain aspects of Eric Clapton. Similar to that genre, which is not super popular in France, unfortunately. It's more of like a party, you know, sort of vibe. So it's been quite difficult to find the correct audience for him, and we've gone through several stages, and we've seen growth. We're just not happy with the amount of growth we've seen with that particular account. And interestingly enough, we're actually, unfortunately, I can't tell you the end of the story because we're still in the middle, but we are now pivoting from the creatives that he was providing us, which is pretty basic videos of, you know, like him singing on a wall, random wall somewhere, you know, kind of just singing the song, and the camera would pan around, you know, and stuff of him in the studio trying to record. It's not really working out as well as we'd like it to, so we're going to try to move over to AI and see what sort of effects that would have on the cost. Yeah, there's really what I'm trying to portray with that particular story is that testing is incredibly important. You know, you're not always going to find your audience on the first shot. Sometimes you might not find it on the second. But it's important that you kind of keep testing and keep pushing because there is an audience. You just got to find it. That's all.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? That was fabulous, Noam. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.